Before the first sunrise ever touched the limestone plateau of Giza, before history had a name for kings or calendars, something else was already waiting there, a question. Not written, not spoken, but carved into the horizon itself, a mountain made by human hands, perfectly aligned, almost impossibly vast, and stubbornly silent about how it came to be. Because the Great Pyramid of Giza does not merely sit on the desert, it confronts us. It asks how. How did a civilization without steel, without wheels as we know them, without modern engines or computers, raise more than 2 million stone blocks into a structure that stood as the tallest building on Earth for nearly 4,000 years? How many stones are there, really? How much do they weigh? How long would it take to build something like this if you treated it not as a myth but as a manufacturing problem? And when you do the math carefully, honestly, the numbers begin to feel unsettling. Let's begin with what we know, and then follow the numbers wherever they lead. The Great Pyramid, attributed to Pharaoh Khufu around 2580 BCE, originally stood about 146.6 meters tall. Today it's slightly shorter, its smooth casing stones long stripped away. Its base covers roughly 13 acres, and each side is aligned to true north with an error margin smaller than many modern buildings. Mainstream Egyptology tells us it is built from approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. That number varies slightly depending on the source. Some say 2.1 million, others closer to 2.5, but 2.3 million is the most commonly cited estimate. Now pause for a moment and let that number settle in. 2.3 million individual stones. Not bricks you can lift with one hand. Not uniform blocks produced by machines. But irregular limestone and granite stones, quarried, shaped, transported, lifted, and placed with astonishing precision. The average limestone block is often said to weigh about 2.5 tons. Some are lighter, perhaps 1.5 tons. Others heavier, 3 or 4 tons. The granite blocks used in the King's Chamber are far heavier, some weighing between 40 and 70 tons each. If we take a conservative average of 2.5 tons per block and multiply that by 2.3 million blocks, we arrive at a staggering figure, approximately 5.75 million tons of stone. That is not the weight of the pyramid metaphorically. That is its literal mass. To put that into perspective, the Eiffel Tower weighs about 10,000 tons. The Great Pyramid outweighs it by a factor of nearly 600. And that stone didn't magically appear at Giza. Most of the limestone came from local quarries nearby, yes, but the finest white casing stones were quarried across the Nile at Tura. The granite came from Aswan, more than 800 kilometers to the south. Every ton had to be cut from bedrock, transported often by river hauled across land, and raised layer by layer. Now comes the question that refuses to go away. How long did it take? The traditional answer is about 20 years. That figure comes from ancient sources like Herodotus and has been repeated for generations. Modern Egyptologists often accept it as plausible, though some stretch the timeline to 25 or even 30 years. Let's be generous and say 20 years. That's roughly 7,300 days. If 2.3 million stones were placed in 7,300 days, that means an average of about 315 stones per day. Every day. Including religious festivals. Including seasonal flooding. Including days when tools broke, workers were injured, or logistics failed. 315 stones per day doesn't sound impossible until you break it down further. Assume a 10-hour workday. That means one stone placed roughly every 2 minutes. One block quarried, transported, positioned, aligned, and set every 2 minutes for 20 years straight. This is where some researchers pause, not to dismiss the achievement, but to reframe it. What if the Great Pyramid was not built like a modern construction site, with ad hoc problem-solving and brute force, but like a carefully optimized production system? Enter an idea borrowed not from ancient history, but from modern manufacturing: takt time. In industrial engineering, takt time is the rate at which a product must be completed to meet demand. If a factory needs to produce 1,000 units per day in a 10-hour shift, its takt time tells it how often one unit must come off the line. Now imagine the Great Pyramid as a stone factory. The product is a placed block. The deadline is the reign of Khufu. If the pyramid truly required 2.3 million stones in 20 years, the takt time again, assuming 10-hour workdays, would be roughly 2 minutes per block. But here's the crucial point. That doesn't mean one team placing one block at a time. It implies parallelization. Many teams. Many processes happening simultaneously. Quarrying in one place, shaping in another, transport elsewhere. Placement happening across multiple faces and levels of the pyramid at once. In other words, a system. Some Egyptologists argue that this is exactly what ancient Egypt excelled at: large-scale organization. They point to evidence of worker villages, ration systems, medical care, and bureaucratic record-keeping. This wasn't slave labor in chains, they argue, but a rotating workforce of skilled and semi-skilled laborers supported by the state. And that explanation is compelling. But even with perfect organization, the physical constraints remain daunting. Consider lifting. How do you raise a 2.5-ton stone to a height of 50 meters, or 100 meters? Without cranes. Without pulleys as we understand them. Without iron. The most commonly proposed answer is ramps, straight ramps, zigzag ramps, spiral ramps, internal ramps hidden within the pyramid itself. Each theory has merits. Each has problems. A straight ramp, for example, would need to be so long and massive that it would rival the pyramid itself in volume. A spiral ramp would obscure the faces, making precise alignment difficult. Internal ramps, proposed by some modern engineers, are intriguing, but evidence remains debated. There is no definitive proof of exactly which ramp system was used, which opens the door to speculation. Some alternative researchers suggest that we are missing a key piece of technology. Others propose lost knowledge, perhaps advanced rope systems, counterweights, or mechanical principles that were later forgotten. A few go much further, suggesting acoustic levitation, geopolymer concrete, or even non-human intervention. To be clear, there is no credible evidence for alien involvement. No artifacts. No texts. No tools. That idea remains firmly in the realm of modern myth, but the fact that such theories persist tells us something important. The numbers feel uncomfortable. Let's talk about precision. The base of the Great Pyramid is leveled to within about 2 centimeters across 230 meters. The sides are oriented to true north with an error of roughly 3 arc minutes. Even today, achieving that without GPS or laser instruments would be impressive. The stones themselves, especially in the core, are not perfectly uniform. But in key areas, such as the King's Chamber, granite blocks fit together so tightly that a razor blade cannot be inserted between them. Granite, remember, is harder than steel and copper tools. How was it cut? Mainstream explanations involve copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, sand abrasives, and immense labor. Experimental archaeology has shown that granite can indeed be shaped this way slowly. Very slowly. Again, the question isn't, is it possible? It's, is it possible at this scale, at this speed? Now let's return to weight, because weight introduces another layer of mystery. The total mass of the Great Pyramid, as we said, is roughly 5.75 million tons. If construction took 20 years, that's about 287,500 tons of material placed per year. That's nearly 800 tons per day. Every single day. For comparison, a modern heavy construction project moving 800 tons per day would rely on diesel machinery, cranes, trucks, steel cables, and computerized planning. Ancient Egypt had human muscle, wooden sledges, rope, water, and stone tools. And yet they succeeded. Or at least, that is the orthodox view. Some critics argue that the 20-year timeline may be wrong. Perhaps construction lasted far longer, 40, 60, even 100 years. That would ease the Takt time pressure significantly. But then another problem arises: historical records. Egyptian king lists, inscriptions, and monuments strongly suggest that pyramids were built within single reigns. The Great Pyramid is closely associated with Khufu alone. If it took generations, why is there no clear evidence of that? Others suggest that a large portion of the pyramid was built using a different method entirely, perhaps casting stones in place using a limestone concrete. This is known as the geopolymer hypothesis. According to this idea, some blocks were not quarried, but poured like concrete into molds. This would explain tight joints and rapid placement. However, most geologists argue that the stones show natural sedimentary features inconsistent with casting. The debate continues, but the consensus remains skeptical. So where does that leave us? With a monument that is simultaneously well-studied and deeply enigmatic. We know who built it. We know roughly when. We know what it's made of. But when we try to reconstruct the process, to run the numbers honestly, step by step, we encounter a civilization operating at the very edge of what seems feasible. Not impossible, but extraordinary. And that's where the conspiracy theories thrive. Not because people want to reject history, but because they want the story to make sense. If the Great Pyramid were built today, with modern tools, it would still be a marvel. With ancient tools, it becomes something more unsettling, a reminder that technological sophistication does not always move in a straight line. That knowledge can be lost. That organization can rival machinery. That human beings, under the right conditions, can achieve things that later generations struggle to explain. The Great Pyramid does not prove that ancient Egyptians had advanced technology beyond our understanding. But it does prove that we may be underestimating them. And perhaps that is the real mystery. But the uncomfortable possibility that a civilization 4,500 years ago mastered logistics, labor management, geometry, astronomy, and engineering at a level we are still trying to fully appreciate. The pyramid stands there still, patient, eroding grain by grain, watching us argue about ramps and stones and timelines. It doesn't answer. It just waits. And maybe that's the point. If this question fascinates you, if the numbers keep echoing in your mind, then stay with us. Because in our next video, we'll explore another ancient structure that challenges everything we think we know about the limits of early civilization.